have a senior moment every once in a while. I moved, so that's really.
This briefly, but I didn't.
I'll try.
Yeah, I got another minute yet. No, it is fine. If I can have your attention, we'll call the February 2019 Planning and Zoning meeting to order. You should have received an agenda, and it's posted. Any changes or corrections or any proposed changes? If not, we'll proceed as printed and posted. First item of business is approve the minutes. James was very distinctive and very succinct, and we had 6 pages. So any corrections or changes? I'd say verbose, but I don't want to hurt his feelings. So, but they're very good. Thank you, Karen. As always, Karen did an excellent job. Any changes or corrections? If not, I'll rule those approved as printed and distributed. Next section's report of city council actions. Mr. Shields.
Thank you. There was a request to insert a new division into Article 3 of Chapter 42, which is known as the Rolla Planning and Zoning Code, to be known as Division 22 Wireless Communication Facilities Code, and that was approved on February 4th, 2019 by the City Council. And that was all for the report on the recent City Council actions, since we went over many of them last time.
Any questions for commissioners on the city council actions? Okay, next section, we have a public hearing tonight. This is a request to rezone the parcel identified with the Phelps County Assessor's account number 12849 from rural residential RR to highway commercial zoning district C3. Mr. Shields.
Thank you. The first case is a request to rezone the parcel identified by the address of 821 Highway 0, and it's to rezone it from RR to C3. As you can see, it's located in southeast Rolla, Missouri, on the southeast side of the intersection of Lion Clubs Drive and Highway O. The applicant is Intercounty Electric Cooperative Association. John and Bessie Ponzer own the parcel currently, but there's a sale contract processing with Intercounty. So Intercounty has a proprietary interest in the property, so they can request the rezoning. So as I said, it's RR to C3 is the request. The project description is future development of the site into an office, warehouse, and outdoor storage area for an electrical service establishment. Just to note, storage warehouses are permitted in C3, CC, M1, and M2, and outdoor storage is in harmony with the C3 intent. As you can see in this map, it's a 1,200 square feet across and about 700 feet deep, depending on how you look at it, and about 20 acres large. And there is also one thing I wanted to note is that there are 4 accessory buildings and a house that are currently not occupied, and they are to be demolished upon development of the site. I just wanted to give you, go over the neighborhood area, kind of the character. As you can see, Rolla owns many parcels along Lions Club Drive. The rural fire department is located here. We have an assisted living facility here. To the northwest, there's about 90 plus acres of single family houses, which is buffered between these two C1 zone parcels owned by the city of Rolla by a linear park. There is an RMU facility which is very similar in use as the proposed development. They keep poles here. There's an office here. It's basically what you would see in the proposed development. As you can see, this is this intersection is at the intersection of 2 arterials. Most of this, the future land use map, most of the neighborhood is designated as the low-density residential on the flume map, the future land use map, and most of it is RR and R1, except for the C1 and the government institutional. So I wanted to go, they did give me a preliminary site plan, so I wanted to go over the proposal in a little bit more detail. So there is going to be a 2,000 square foot warehouse for trucks and materials for power lines right here, an outdoor storage area for transformers and pole racks. About 15 employees will be working throughout in the warehouse, 3 or 4 employees in the office. The applicant proposes to keep the existing vegetation right here on the south side of the property, which is about 60 feet in some places to about 30 feet wide in other places. 20 feet from that existing vegetarian will be this fenced-in area that contains all the storage and warehouse and buildings, except for the office, obviously. And that will be screened with a privacy fence. Existing residential and accessory buildings will be demolished. So moving on to the analysis, there are 90 plus acres of single-family homes to the northwest are substantially distanced and buffered from the proposed development, meaning that it's unlikely that there will be a direct impact on those homes. Existing facility of similar use, the RMU facility, has existed in the neighborhood since the 70s. There are certain aspects of outdoor storage that are incompatible with peaceful and satisfying residential activities, such as noise from the machines, the beeping of the forklifts, and it's also, there are degrading aesthetics associated with outdoor storage. However, proper buffers and screening can mitigate these effects on surrounding existing and future residential development, seeing that to the east there is open RR land that can be developed as residential also. A Type E 30-foot buffer yard will be required on the south and east borders. Type E buffers require a substantial amount of plantings, and the applicant proposes to enclose the outdoor storage and warehouse with a 6.5-foot privacy fence and to locate the office parking along Lions Club Drive. In regards to the intent of the comprehensive plan, the future land use map designation is not consistent with a zoning to C3. The zoning of the subject parcel, but that can be fixed with a flume amendment designating the parcel as community commercial on the future land use map. In addition, one of the key community issues outlined in Rolla 2020 is the protection of residential neighborhoods from the encroachment of incompatible uses. However, C3 is also intended to be located on arterial roads, especially at intersections. So this is the last slide, and just a little bit on the analysis and some recommended conditions. Traffic safety, there will be a truck and regular traffic, customer employee traffic associated with the development. No pedestrian-related traffic accidents have been reported at the intersection. However, there have been several auto accidents at the entrance of the RMU facility. And we don't know if that's due to the fact that the RMU facility is there, or it's just, those accidents may have happened without the RMU facility there, but it is noteworthy. The Public Works Department does not foresee any major traffic issues. There is no other C3 surrounding these parcels, but C1 is across the street, and the rezoning area is substantial in size. So there are a few recommended conditions that you can consider, alter, or just not recommend them. But in order to mitigate some of the effects of the outdoor storage and the development, we recommended that outdoor storage warehouses and storage buildings be located at least 100 feet from any residential zoning district, and that such storage and buildings be screened by a privacy fence of at least 6 feet in height. That all residential and accessory buildings currently located on the subject parcel be demolished or repurposed for non-residential uses. There were about 3 people that called just to inquire about the project. There was one official comment, comment from a owner of a large piece of property to the southeast of the subject parcel, and he said that he would like to see the buildings lined along Highway O and for the outdoor storage to be behind those buildings. There were no other comments, and the action requested from the Planning and Zoning Commission is to recommend the approval, denial, or conditional approval of the applicant's proposal to rezone the subject parcel from RR to C3. And that's it.
Okay, any questions for commissioners?
James, can you go back to the first slide on the boundary line?
The first slide?
Okay.
Oh, that one?
Oh, yeah, that
Sure.
one right there. Now, on the south side, southwest side, the red line is beyond the tree line, is for the backyards, is that correct? It's almost into their yards?
It's, and this is GIS, there's about a 3-foot,
Okay,
area. But yeah, I think that it straddles it looks like it straddles, and some of the owners might know better, but it looks like that the existing vegetation The south few feet of that straddles the property line, but most of it, from the 30 to 60 feet of vegetation is on the subject parcel. It appears to be so in GIS.
And most of the development is in the northeast portion of this property.
That's correct.
James, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is currently designated as residential?
The zoning is rural residential, and the future land use map has it as low-density residential.
Okay, and they want C3,
Yes.
which is the highest intensity commercial use. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And if we were to agree, or if this were rezoned to C3 and Intercounty decides they don't want to go, or they sell down the road, then any C3 use would be allowed. Isn't that correct?
That is correct.
So you could have things like sexually oriented businesses, right?
That's correct.
That's not-
Archery,
that's
firearms
not
ranges.
correct. There's an ordinance in the city that limits that, so.
Well, as long as you meet the criteria, it would.
Because that's why
C3.
Laser Zone or whatever it is moved out of the city.
There are other state regulations, but
I
as
think-
far as zoning would be concerned, yeah.
Well, I'm looking at Division 10, C3, Highway Commercial District in our planning code.
Mhm.
And it says any use or conditional use is permitted by C1 or C2, agricultural implements, sales and service, sexually oriented business as defined in Chapter 29, auction sales, archery and firearm ranges, battery shops, builder supply and lumber yards, bus stations, bottling plants, carpet cleaning, contractor equipment, sales and service, commercial laundry, crematoriums, and on and on and on. I can't understand why we would want to put something like that adjacent to residential on all sides.
It's, yeah. The future, the comprehensive plan, it's because, there has to be, it's at the intersection of two arterials, so there has to be some expectation that this could be an appropriate location for, that's on one side of the coin, this could be an appropriate location for it because it's at two arterials.
I would agree if there were some other commercial around there, or perhaps they were wanting C1,
Right.
which is supposed to be the transition from residential to C1, but they want to go C3, which is the most intensive use, and there's no C3, there's not even really any commercial there. There's a couple of C1 lots that RMU is trying to sell, but I don't see how this would fit with the character of that neighborhood, and I believe this would be detrimental to the people who have, it looks like there's a lot of homes that abut this property. Certainly, they have an expectation, I think, in having their property preserved in a way that respects that, and I don't think changing this to C3 respects those property owners all around this property.
Any other comments or questions? As a point of reference, I think all property came in on the south side annexation is RR. If it wasn't already developed, it was just land, so that's why it's RR now. So everything in the south side that I know of came in and just was zoned that way.
The residential areas, they're pretty isolated from other commercial uses, small neighborhood uses like a corner store or something like that. So I think perhaps a C1 would be a good location for such things as a little, corner store or some little shops or something like that.
Any other questions? If not, we'll officially open the public hearing. And ask that anyone wishing to speak to this issue come forward, state your name and address for the record. Please try not to repeat what someone else has already said. Well, is anyone from Intercounty here and would like to speak?
Yes.
Would you like to come forward and start?
Speak first or after?
It doesn't matter.
I would just say.
Okay.
Everybody else is supposed to.
All right.
If that's okay.
Okay. Anyone wishing to speak, please come forward. Mr. Priest, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
I need to, do I identify?
I need your name and the
Name
address.
and-
Don Priest, 1017. Or, I'm sorry, 1295 Highway O.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I want this
Okay.
picture. My question is not about really the zoning per se, C1, C3. My question is, if you have the screen up, I don't know, is there a pointer or anything to make it?
It's a little complicated, you have to use that screen, so you would see how the mouse is over here. You don't point
Over
it,
here.
you point it over there. Yeah. You point, no, you use the mouse to point over there.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Right, do you see these houses here? Can you follow me on the picture there?
Yes.
Okay, right here where the arrow is, this is a stub for a street that's in your city plan called Inverness. And that street is on the city plan is to go right up to here and connect with Lions Cove Drive. Now, my point is this how does this affect the plan for the proposed street that's in the city plan?
Is there not a house on that lot?
There's not, but there's a stub for a street from the subdivision which stops here. But the city plan calls for a street to run along this edge, right here.
I'm not aware of any street, but there possibly could be.
Don, if you would go right out there, there is a stub for the street to stop. When they put in the subdivision, they stubbed for the street, and that followed the city plan, which was drawn up after the annexation. But
There was
there's,
already a development before his annex, though, correct me if I'm wrong, I think.
yes, but the present city plan calls for a street to go right, follow the arrow right there.
Could be. a lot
Now,
of
how does this affect the city plan?
If someone develops a property, I don't think they can put a street in there. So. There's also, I think, a stub going east out of this subdivision.
Right,
I
there's
don't
one,
think- But there's a big
there's
ditch.
one out of the picture. This is the other end of the stub,
Yeah,
down at the bottom of the hill, and
but I don't think
This
it'll
subdivision.
ever be put in either because there's be quite a
my
expanse.
question is, how does this affect,
I don't know. You'd have to, that's above
well,
our,
that was my question.
above our volunteer pay grade, so.
I mean, that's a very valid question, it's silly.
We have a lot of streets that have never been finished and probably never will.
Yeah, I realize that, but the city plan was drawn up for, where's the damn arrow?
James, you want to help him with?
We certainly have to get an answer to that question, I guess, at some point in time.
It won't affect us.
Okay, now, could we bring this street up, this one up?
Okay.
Okay, now let me go over here. Now, where we're talking about here in question
Better there.
is this strip right in here. See where this arrow is? It's called Inverness Drive. The city plans call for a street to be built here, right at the edge of this, and go on and down here, and then go on past here. But there is a stub for that street, which stops right here at the red. and stops here.
Would you like me to comment on this?
Go ahead. It's
I would
an
have
open
to-
hearing.
I would have to get with Public Works and see if, what the plans are, and I have it on GIS, I could look it up, but it would take a minute. But you can't stop somebody from developing their property, even if there was at one time a road plan for through that
You-
property, because they would have to actually either buy that or do eminent domain to take that to create a road. But that's all I can say until I do further research. That's,
Until you do further research and look at the plan.
yeah, I think.
Okay,
But it runs down the property line, so it still could go in on the edge of their that's the east
No,
end
no,
of this
it-
proposed site.
you notice there, that's in the property in question here.
Yeah, but it's
right.
right on the edge. Correct me if
Well,
I'm wrong.
no, it's the width of a road.
Well, you could still put the road through, I think. I don't see that.
Well, that'll be their property now.
Well,
This is the property in
I'm
question.
sure Enter County probably, if the city
Well,
wanted to put it in.
probably, and so on, Don.
I don't think that'll affect the zoning, though. It'll be another issue, so.
Well, it is an issue. This is why we're here tonight.
No, I understand that, but the road, I don't think's where you say it's proposed to go.
Well,
But I could be wrong, but I don't think we have
yeah,
anybody. But
there
we
is a
can
map.
get that
Yes.
answer before you.
there is a city map which I have seen come from.
Yeah, we got 3 of them back there in the back.
uh,
If I may, real quick.
Go ahead, James.
Public Works looked at this, and if they would have had any objections to any of this, they would have noted it in their memo. But just to let,
I'm not objecting.
oh, no, I was saying if Public
I
Works.
am
object-
looking as a point of information,
Yeah, we could look into it. I will definitely look into it.
because it does have an effect on that you can't think about. This has nothing to do with C1, C3, or any of that. But it does have an effect on some of us who live over here.
Okay, thank you. We'll get some information to you. I sat in on the Development Review Committee, and the road wasn't discussed and didn't seem to be an issue, but.
Well, but, yeah,
But I'll.
it is.
I'll ask James to check with him, so.
That's all I gotta know.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else would like to speak to this issue? Please come forward, state your name and address for our record.
Lyndon Henley.
I'm sorry.
Lyndon Henley, Henley, 1416 Huntley,
Thank you.
which is the street, the neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
And everything I have to say is exactly what he just said. We bought into a residential neighborhood that was supposed to be a very good, nice neighborhood, which it is. And now we're looking at, don't have anything against Enter County per se, but it's zoned where anybody could basically move in there. And if they decided for whatever reason to sell, it could be anything. And it could be a 24-hour gas station to a car wash to whatever. And that's not what we bought. And our main concern, obviously, is our property value. Would you want this in your backyard? Because essentially, that's what's happening to the people on Huntley Drive. They're going to have this in their backyard. And that is the concern, is that if we had known that, either we wouldn't have bought there, or we would have certainly paid less than we did. And I think that applies to, all the people in our little neighborhood, because it's just a 2-street neighborhood. It's a very nice neighborhood. And we obviously want to keep it that way. And so putting anything along there to us would affect that.
Okay.
And that makes it, it's just not like you see kids going down to catch the school bus, comes 2 stops right down Huntley, and there's kids running around, that's the kind of neighborhood it is. So that's my point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak to this issue, please come forward.
I'm David Reynolds, 1511 Huntley Drive. I own the property at the very end there by Huntley and Burness, and I think I would ask that you all give it serious consideration. As previously stated, the property values, I think, are going to decrease. The noise we're going to have to put up with. And it's just a nice, quiet, peaceful area. I just recently bought there, and had I known something like this, I probably would not have purchased that property. So it's something to consider. I would like to see, if you do consider rezoning, that you don't go 3, you go 1 or 2. Because 3 is going to allow anything and everything that could come in there, firing range, archery, anything that possible, jump yard, whatever. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Bryce Crowley,
Can you spell your last name?
Crowley, first name Bryce.
B-R-Y-C-E. Okay.
My name's Bryce Crowley. I also live in Huntley. I'm
Can I get your address real quick?
1510
Okay,
Huntley,
thank you.
which is second. The second from the house. I'm not within the 185-foot designation, but I am within the 300-foot designation. As far as property values, I think that's been covered. I don't believe that my property values will stay stagnant. I believe they'll go down. I purchased that house at late March of last year, so I have not been there quite a year. Since that time, there have been 2 houses sold. One is the gentleman that just spoke, which is a fairly identical piece of property to mine, and I believe he bought within the last few months. And based on what I've learned, his property value, or the price that his house sold, was a significant raise from the price that I paid just 9 months prior. So the property value are going up. I believe that by rezoning it to C3, I think any sort of modicum of research would show that commercial property values degrade residential home values, especially within 300 feet. And I would say with that entire neighborhood, even though Overland Drive isn't within the 300-foot zone, I would guarantee that because they are part of that neighborhood, that they are no longer, or their property values would decrease as well. There are also several people who are in the current process of selling and purchasing and homes in that neighborhood. I would hate to see what would happen to that property value, what that bar would set if they are allowed to rezone the C3. The second thing is I wanted to address some of the issues that Mr. Shields talked about, how RMU has been there since the 70s. That's correct. RMU has been there since the 70s. To the north of RMU is a bunch of multifamily housing. Those types of property values aren't affected as great as single residence values by commercial use. And so while they've been there since the 70s, most of those houses, I believe all of them were built after RMU was already there. And so those developers, those purchasers, those property owners were allowed to at least have that in their arsenal of information when they purchased, when they bartered, and when they bought those properties. We don't have that in Huntley Drive, and we don't have, or Huntley Estates, which is what the neighborhood is called. We are basically now at the mercy of this commission and the city council to be able to, save our money. And I believe by rezoning, several issues were talked about, future land use map. I believe, Mr. Brown, you mentioned the fact that, that was just all rezoned rural residential. My guess is way back when, before Rolla city limits even really got out that far. But if you look at the amount of development that has been in that area since probably it was made rural residential, I've been a lifelong, or not lifelong, I guess, I moved here when I was about 10, so I've been here about 20 some odd years. And if I remember correctly, back whenever I was living in Rolla at first, when I was a kid, there were no residences in what's called Oak Mills South now, which would be right in here and up. That area was not developed. Those are all new residential buildings built within the last 15 years or so. South of Lions Club Drive, past the assisted living facility there to the west of the assisted living facility, south of Lions Club Drive, there's now residential neighborhoods being built. If you go out further on O Highway, to the west side of O Highway, Cason Drive, all of those are all brand new houses that have been built within the last 15 years that were not there whenever I moved to Rolla. So to sit here and say that, we may not develop it or someone may not develop it, you're right, someone may not. But if we look on historical data that we have, development is coming that direction in the way of single-family residences. And so to say that no one will ever develop this piece of property right here and take this road or develop to the south of us and move that road down, I think is a little short-sighted because we have evidence that that's actually happening now. I think the idea that, there's a privacy fence, that's not going to change the aesthetics. A privacy fence doesn't do anything for everyone because everyone knows what's on the other side of that fence. Leaving vegetation, that's a great plan, but once you rezone it and they start building, there's no guarantee that happens either. And so this idea that we're going to have a large storage yard, if you look at Rolla Municipal Storage Yard, that extends to the back side of the property where it backs up to other C1 development. It doesn't back up to rural residential development like it would in this instance. You can see it right here. It says C1. And if you actually go and look at it, there's no houses behind the RMU storage facility right now. It's the back side of, I can't remember what's on that side. I went and looked at it, but I can't remember what's on the back side. And so it's a different situation than Rolla Municipal because there's no housing that's directly affected by Rolla Municipal other than people who decided to build their house there to begin with. So this idea that it's the same or it's similar is, I think, untrue, and I think it's a little misleading to say that. Finally, I don't know, it says here that they're going to have a barrier in that, and I would ask, and Intercounty can certainly speak to this, if you look at the grading of that road, Huntley Estates, the entrance into Huntley Estates is actually at the top of the hill. That entire way from Lions Club Drive to the entrance of Huntley Estates is one large incline. And so the idea that they're going to put their storage unit on what is essentially an incline tells me that they're probably going to have to do some sort of excavation work to make that flatter so it's a little more congruent with what RMU has. My guess is, and I would like to know what kind of demolition or any sort of excavation they have planned for that site in order to facilitate that, because they can't, as it sits right now, as land sits right now, they can't just go ahead and just have everything stored on an incline. I don't think they would want to do that. I certainly, if I was building a storage yard, wouldn't want to have my, storage units built on an incline. But I'll get to it. And so I
Got
think
other people would like to speak.
I'm sure we do, but this is a public hearing. And
You're allowed 5 minutes. I've been very generous, so.
So I would object to any sort of rezoning, even C1. I don't think that C1 and still allowing them to come in saves anything. It still devalues my property, and it still devalues everyone else's property. Not to mention the fact that, look, we've talked about this, crime rates. Right now, we don't have crime in Huntley Estates, but you put a bunch of copper wiring and you put a bunch of wiring and things like that back there, I would expect we start seeing a little more crime in that area. I don't think everyone else wants to hear that. I think Detective Dillon could probably speak to that more than I could. And so for that, I would object. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak, please come forward. Please try to limit your comments to 5 minutes and try not to repeat what's been said before.
Good evening. My name is Dan Foster. I live at 1510 Huntley Drive.
Thank you.
I'm Bryce's neighbor that he didn't know about. I have nothing new to add other than I really do want that behind our house. I think it'll have adverse effects. I think he's been very eloquent and precise, telling you why it would be bad for our neighborhoods. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Mary Sue Arnold. I live at 1415 Huntley. It's the third house down. We are right behind the area that's being proposed. I just have a question. I don't hear as well as I used to, so I couldn't hear the discussion on the difference in the zoning. And although I did look up the zoning ordinance and was pleased to see that there will be a buffer, I would prefer that buffer be wider than 20 feet. Also, can they not do what they want to do with C1 zoning?
No, outside storage, I think, requires C3. For what they're proposing to do, they need C3, is my understanding.
Okay. That's
And you could,
just my question.
someone else could buy it and put in C1, and there, like Mr. Shields says, there's two arterial roads, so most people aren't gonna build an R1 subdivision on that intersection, I wouldn't think, but they could. But you'd have to have C3 to do what they're proposing to do.
Well, at present, I have no opinion one way or the other, except I did have the question, and I would prefer a wider buffer zone.
Okay, they're gonna leave the trees and they're gonna put up a fence, but I don't know how wide that is, but I'm sure the gentleman will tell us in a minute, so. Thank you,
Thank you.
Sue. Anybody else wishing to speak, please come forward. We'll get to you all eventually.
Scott Prophet, 1503 Huntley. I got here a little bit late. I apologize for that. I didn't catch the beginning. Another concern that we have is the lighting that's going to be up at night. Is it going to be enough to just, I mean, my bedroom backs up to that property. And so we're concerned on, is it going to light up my room at night and things like that. And also concerned as to what they consider a privacy fence versus what I consider a privacy fence. A 6.5 foot fence with green mesh in it, that's here on me. My tippy toes, I can see over that privacy fence. So, and like I said, that's another concern that we have for the lighting at night, how that's going to be.
Hi, I'm Melissa Dillon, and I live on 1423 Huntley Drive. So our property backs up right to where they're wanting to put this storage unit. And I appreciate Intercounty calling. They kind of called around to get, our opinions. But I just want to go on record that my husband and I are totally against this. We bought our house 2 years ago. We would never have bought if I would have known that this was coming in 2 years later. We would have tried to find something else. We have 5 kids. I have a little one. I don't want that in our backyard. So I just would like to go on record that we would love for this not to go in, whether it be C1, C2, C3. I don't care what C it is. I just don't think it needs to be there. So it's nice and quiet. We like the quiet that we have. Where we are, it really isn't a deep buffer. I mean, there is a buffer with trees, but a 6.5 foot privacy fence, I'll be able to see it. I'll be able to see everything from where our bedroom is. It's upstairs, and it kind of backs up the same with the Profits. Our bedroom's back up to it. So we just want to go on record to say we would rather this not be in our backyard. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak to this issue, please come forward. Intercounty want to speak, or if not, I'll officially close the public hearings.
Okay, my name's Doug Lane, and I'm here representing Intercounty. And I appreciate all the concerns that everybody has for this proposed zoning. Property values, I'm not a real estate person. I have no idea what it'll do to property values, to be honest with you right up front. The buffer that is there, and we will work with the neighborhood and the city to increase that, to satisfy whatever needs we need to do for that, to alleviate the concerns of viewing or whatever, and help alleviate noise. I'm not going to lie to you. There will be a little bit of noise. Typically our work hours are 7:30 to 8 o'clock show up time in the morning, and generally the trucks are loaded and gone by 8:30, 9 o'clock, then they come back in the evening. These are short periods of time. The only outside storage we will have that they will be accessing would be poles and transformers. Everything else is inside. Forklifts very rarely go outside. Everything's usually loaded with a truck on the outside. Forklifts are inside, so the beeping and things like that are internal. The gentleman asked about how we were going to level that out. We probably will terrace that to minimize the effect on the land. That way you could drive in between terraces, and it's not the proposed part where we're wanting to do is in the flat part of that. It's not really flat, but the more flat part of that field. The comment about crime, we have, we have 9 different facilities around our territory. I've been working in Enter County for 12 years, and we've had 1 break-in in 12 years. We have security cameras. We have lighting and security around all of our places, and we're very diligent about keeping an eye on them in the after hours. So crime is not an issue around our facilities because it is locked down and secured. And let's see. I think I covered the noise level, the lighting. Now, there will be lighting at night, but with the technology that we have today, lighting can be directional and it can be dimmed after certain hours, just so you can kind of see how to get around, and it won't be bright. We will not point lights toward any residential area. We would point everything away. But I mean, there's different heights you can do with that. And there's all kinds of options that we would do in this. We chose pursuing this place because we wanted to be in a city municipal area for the members when they come in and out doing business, where they have, places to shop and places to go and do other things while they're coming to do business with us. We'll do everything in our power to work with the neighborhood in the planning of this to minimize any impact and any concerns, and we will be open to any suggestions. So other than that, a lot of these folks I've already talked to. They have my phone number. They know how to get a hold of me. They can contact me at any time, and we do appreciate the concerns, and we would just like your consideration. The buffer zone, I don't know exactly how wide the vegetation that is there now, but we plan on, at its widest point, making it that wide all the way down. There are some thin spots, so we plan on filling that in, and that would have to be with the city planning, because that way we will use the type of trees that are correct for that type of zoning. As far as us selling this, we do not sell property. Once we buy property, we keep it. We put a facility there. We maintain it. We keep it neat. The end where the rock house is, there will be, all of that will be cleaned up. The trees will be left. There may be a few trees that be taken down that are like rotten or in bad shape. They would need to be taken out. But for the most part, it would be mowed and trees left, and then everything would be in behind the hill. So that's all I have. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Anybody else wishing to speak to this issue, please come forward. Seeing none, I'll officially close the public hearing. Any questions or comments from commissioners for Mr. Shields?
Is there a write-up in the, didn't bring that piece of paper, the width of the buffer from the property line back to the privacy fence? I thought it was fairly wide, wasn't it?
The required buffer yard is 30 feet. 30 feet on the south and east sides. And there's, for every 100 lineal feet, they need, I can look it up exactly, but multiple different types of trees for every 100 feet.
Well, they were gonna do trees, shrubs,
Yeah.
intermediate-sized
Right.
trees.
There's evergreens, shrubs, understory trees, and canopy trees.
Would not only a visual buffer, but also a soundproofing buffer that most municipalities use around streets and whatever,
It can mitigate, it's not sound.
to knock all of that down.
It can mitigate the sound, yeah. That's why I said, while it's, some of these, while these land uses are obviously not compatible, if you were going to approve it, I would definitely recommend making sure they're at least 100 feet away and that there is a privacy fence if you were going to approve it. And do you mind if I address one of the comments? There was a comment about pointing out that the RMU facility is a similar situation. I only pointed out that the RMU facility exists because it's a very similar use and it exists in that neighborhood. I wasn't trying to imply that it's the same situation at all. I know that these are very different situations. And even that's why I pointed out that there were auto accidents in front of the RMU facility. And I was surprised there were no pedestrian accidents, just to clarify.
Any other questions or comments? And entertain a motion?
Tom, you said it can't be C1.
No.
Not for the intent, it'd be C1, but they couldn't do
But
what,
not for what they want.
inter-county's not gonna be able to use it if
not.
it's C1, C2.
And
And that's because the city has restrictions on what you can do.
but the odd thing is that a
I mean,
public,
you could put a whole lot of things on that corner. You could put,
what's odd is that the city could put an RMU facility there and zone it GI.
yeah,
So
highway department could come in and, if it's a government entity, they could do it, but.
I know. So that's
And you could have Section 8 housing in R3 there, so. You could have all kinds of uses, so you'd have to have it rezoned, but.
Get it off ground zero, I'll recommend we send it to the council with our approval. See
Okay,
where it goes.
Mr. Smith made a motion, we send it to city council with our approval.
You're gonna add the conditions to it?
Well, I wanted the, that's why I was wondering what the width of the buffer was.
it's 30 feet, but if they propose to put a chain link fence, which would not reduce it by half. So it's going to be 30 feet wide on the south and east side.
Bill, would 50 feet be possible?
You can require a 50-foot buffer instead.
If you put a 50-foot buffer there and you plant that like they're talking, which is recommended by most government agencies, is a thorough buffer, there's nobody gonna know it's over there. You can't see it, you can't hear it, I guess you can't even feel it, so. I would add that to my motion.
Okay,
So the condition except, so that's different than what this condition is. So that would be the condition that the buffer yard on the south and east sides
South side, yeah.
is 50 feet wide, and that the number of plantings for the type E buffer is provided for every 100 lineal feet.
what about the east side? Gonna be a problem?
Is it for just the south or just this? Because the,
Just the south side.
Okay.
so that's the condition though. So for the south side, a 50-foot buffer with type E plantings.
We're allowed to make a motion to approve, deny, or approve conditions, so this will be a motion to approve with the condition that you have a 50-foot buffer. Do I have a second?
Second. So we get a vote.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Jordan. Any questions or comments from commissioners? Roll call vote, please.
Crowell,
No.
Jordan,
No.
Martin,
No.
Schmidt,
No.
Monty Shields,
No.
Anderson,
No.
Bowie.
No.
The motion fails.
Okay, we'll have to give, any motion that we send to city council without our approval, we have to give reasons. Does anybody want to summarize and give a reason?
I agree with the residents that this isn't proper use of this property behind their property.
Okay.
Well said. Agree.
I think also, since
did they say?
it's
Not proper use.
C3 right up against R1, that's highly unrecommended.
Yep.
Is that a good term? Yep. I think when you put a C3 up against an R1, even in many of your talks, that's not a good idea.
Yeah, I've said that many times.
It's definitely going to be detrimental to the property value. There's no.
Well, may or may
That's a
not.
given.
It depends on what else, you put in, but, okay. Just for a point of information for the audience, we send the recommendation to the city council. They'll also have a public hearing in 2 weeks or week, or
Next week, next Monday. On the
next
19th.
Monday night.
On the 19th.
So,
There will-
traditionally, they always pretty much followed our recommendations, but occasionally and here lately, they haven't, so, just- I tend to be one, tell it like it is, so, that's the way it is, so they may follow our direction, or recommendations, and they will, may not, so, but we thank you for coming. We have several other items that you're welcome to sit and listen to. They're real interesting, but if you'd like to leave, I'll take a short break, and thank you for your attendance, and thank you for your patience. Next item of business, we have 3 items under new business. A request to approve the final plat of Cottonwood Drive Addition, which is a plat that will, through minor subdivision process, consolidate the parcels identified with the Phelps County Assessor. And hopefully, if this is the final plat, we've done this several times with this subdivision, so.
Oh, the Cottonwood or joint?
No, not Cottonwood, the other one.
Oh, the other one, okay, I'm sorry.
That's-
Mr. Shields.
All right, this is the Cottonwood consolidation. The subject lots are located on the north side of the intersection of Cottonwood Drive and South Bishop Avenue in the southwestern section of Rolla. The applicant is William Robert and Susan Stoltz. Rusty Doss of the Overland Group, which is an umbrella LLC that builds and owns the buildings in which Dollar General retail stores operate. The Overland Group has executed a purchase and sale agreement with the applicant to purchase the subject lots in order to build a Dollar General store. And as you can see, it meets all the area requirements, 1.63 acres, 167 feet wide. This is the subdivision plat. All the subdivision regulations are met. So there's a 10-foot utility easement that goes around the lot. The other utility easements for electrical service shall be obtained, and the building here shall be demolished before permits are issued. Basically, I'll put that into one of these sections in the ordinance saying that the building has to be demolished, and if necessary, they need to get the other easements as needed for their electrical service. I've attached all the comments from other other departments. No comments have been issued. I do have a site plan if you want to look at that also, but this was a very simple proposal. So the action required from the Planning and Zoning Commission is to recommend to the City Council the approval, denial, or conditional approval of the final plat of Cottonwood Drive Addition. And that's it. Anybody have questions?
Any questions? It was originally, it's already zone C3, is that correct?
It's Zone C2.
C2, which will work for a Dollar General,
Yes,
so.
it will work.
Any questions, comments?
Is where the Stoltz old house, is that also C2?
Yes, that's C2.
Motion to recommend approval of the final plat of Cottonwood.
Mr. Jordan made a recommendation to approve the final plat of Cottonwood.
Second.
Mr. Monty Shields seconded. Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote, please.
Anderson,
Yes.
Bowie,
Yes.
Crowell,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Schmidt,
Yes.
and Monty Shields.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Next item is a request to approve the final plat of Joyner Acres.
Thank you. The subject parcel is located north of the intersection of Thomas Drive and Tracy Dawn Drive. The address is 1335 Thomas Drive. So you may remember from a little recently that this is Moutre Acres. So the subject lot is Lot 4 currently of Moutre Acres. Before that, it was Tract A of Joyner Estates. And the Moutre Acres subdivision was done so that Tract A of Joyner Estates could sell Moutre these three, the northern halves of Lot 1, Lot 2, and Lot 3. This is coming back because they want a different name for purposes of conveyance, for title searches, because Joyner Estates is very similar to Joyner Acres. There must have been a miscommunication between the surveyor and Mr. Joyner, and he didn't realize that his lot was going to be called Moutre Acres. So everything is the exact same. So we approved this lot last time. Everything about the lot meets the subdivision regulations. Everything about the plat meets subdivision regulations. No easements were requested, and no revisions are needed. So there have been no public comments either. And the action required from the Planning and Zoning Commission is to recommend to the City Council the approval, denial, or conditional approval of the final plat of Joyner Acres. And that's it. If anybody had any questions.
Any questions? Quiet group tonight. If none,
We're thirsty.
Yeah.
I'd entertain a motion.
I move that we send this request to the city council with our recommendation to approve it.
Second.
Yeah, motion by Mr. Shields and second by Mr. Anderson. Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote, please.
Monty Shields,
Yes.
Schmidt,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Bowie,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Crowell,
Yes.
and Martin.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Karen. Next item is a request for the city of Rolla to vacate entire alley that connects to the Rolla Street to the northwestern end of Houston Road, which may or may not be an alley, we're not sure.
Yeah. No one claimed it, so then we just.
Mr. Shields.
Thank you. The subject alley is located in west central Rolla between Rolla Street and the northeastern end of Houston Road, as you can see here. This is a closer look at it. You can see the four property owners that own property along the line of the alley. It's about 260 feet long, 16.5 feet wide. In summary, the city recommends vacating this alley to facilitate conveyance of property, and because there is no evidence that the vacation was properly dedicated to the city, nor has the alley ever been understood as an official city alley. So basically, in all the deeds, it was never included in all the deeds that we looked through, and so it just remained a city-owned property, but it was never maintained by the city. Now, the vacation of alleys is a very, it should be taken, it's an important thing to consider because there are a lot of benefits to alley, but this piece of land is not a functional alley. It's actually fronting on one lot and on the side of two other lots, and it could never function as a true alley. And that's it. There have been all four of these property owners have been notified. Nobody has made any comments. And the action requested from the Planning and Zoning Commission is to recommend the approval, denial, or conditional approval of the proposal to vacate the subject alley. And that's it. Anybody had any questions?
Any questions?
How do you divide the ownership of this piece of land then?
Usually it's done half and half. Half person gets this and half, but that's something for the lawyers to work out. What our vacation does is just say, we do not want this property. It can be conveyed however your lawyers figure out how to convey it.
Just wondered.
Yeah. But usually it is half and half. But one person might not want it, so they might give it to the other person or something like that. But one other thing is nobody's access will be eliminated. So that is one other point.
But if it ceases to exist, it reverts back to the property owners that are adjacent to it. So,
Yeah. Typically.
correct assumption?
Typically, yeah.
Typically.
But there's probably instances where it hasn't, from what I've heard.
Any other questions? Comments? I'd entertain a motion.
It's to the city council with our approval.
Mr. Bowie? made a-
Second.
Mr. Jordan seconded. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Anderson,
Yes.
Bowie,
Yes.
Crowell,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Schmidt,
Yes.
and Shields.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We have no old business. Chairperson has nothing. We have no committees. We do want to thank Karen for putting up with us for several months, and I don't have a plaque. We don't have a budget, so I don't have a plaque or certificate. I thought about going buying a rose, but I didn't know whether that'd be appropriate. So, and I knew I'd have to pay for it
I
without
think
it.
you'll do.
But we do appreciate, I read her minutes and like I say, 6 pages, it takes a lot to get, and I tend to mumble, so it makes it even worse. So, but we do thank you. We'd like to welcome Madeline Brown. Good name. Hopefully we'll be as kind to you as we have been to Karen, and we'll try and help, and I'll try to tell who's making the motions, but welcome, and if I find a certificate, I'll get one for you. We do thank you. Just one other item.
More staples, I think.
Yeah, I know, I just was remiss, so, just for FYI, we're not the only one doing signs. Crestwood, Kirkwood, and Webster Groves have all been messing with signs in the city, and they're gonna limit the flashing signs, which James thinks illegal, but I think it probably would work, but he might get sued, but, and also in today's St. Louis paper, Vince, whatever that guy that owns Tony's Restaurants, he's out, and they're a chartered city, so he's wanting to form a commission to regulate signs, so, it's interesting that St. Louis is about 3 months after we are.
It's the whole country.
Yeah.
Really.
Anyway,
Definitely trendsetters.
yeah. Well, they're
Right here,
They learned anything from us.
right here in the heart of the Ozarks.
Definitely right.
well,
I'm sure they did.
Mr. Bromerito said there's signs, and more signs. So, it's,
There is going to be a new 400 square foot digital sign.
but anyway, just FYI. Any other comments? Anybody from the audience wish to speak? Mr. Hohenfeld?
I think we lost them all.
I lost Mr. Hohenfeld. We appreciate you staying with us. So. If not, we're adjourned. Thank
Stay
you.
awake. Look at that.
There will most likely not a meeting next month. So.
Bar.